So good morning, everybody. Those of you who are joining us from home live this morning, we're having a cafe church service here in the church, and at one point later on in the service, Birgit is going to start a Zoom call, so you're welcome to join in with others who are watching live in a Zoom call, because we're going to be having some discussions here in the service this morning, and we don't want you to feel left out. A slide will come up at the appropriate time to alert you to when Zoom's going live, so feel free to join in. To the rest of you who are in the sanctuary, you too are very welcome this morning, and this is the second of our quarterly cafe church services, and as the name suggests, it's like a cafe, if you hadn't noticed. And so there's tea and coffee, and Aileen and Louise are going to be replenishing supplies, as well as pastries cooked in the middle of the night last night by the chef at Tesco and Toll Cross. Had them all ready for me this morning, so that's great. So please help yourselves. What is a cafe service? You're asking yourselves. Yes, we sit around, we drink coffee and tea, we eat pastries, but it's much more than that. We're often used to sitting in churches listening, aren't we? Listening to someone preach, and someone who's done a lot of theological thinking about what they're going to say. And often that feeds us, our spirits, and challenges us to action. We don't often get the chance ourselves to be practical theologians, to sit around and discuss life, the world, the challenges we face in the light of what the Bible says. And so this morning, you are all theologians. You're going to be thinking about God, thinking about some of the real challenges we face as human beings. And the theme this morning is about suffering. And we're going to have three parts to the thinking piece, and Ruth and Susan and Linda are going to be leading us in one part each. And there's some resources on your table. There's some sticky notes, large sticky notes, and we've put, as you can see over to your left, a piece of black paper on the wall with parts 1, 2, and 3. And we've been encouraging at your tables, if you wish, you don't have to do this, but if you wish, in answer to some of the questions, you can write them on the sticky notes and put them under the relevant part on that black sheet. You've also on your tables got some little small leaves, and we'll be encouraging those who wish to write on those. And Susan is going to say more about that in a few minutes. And when you've written on it, you or someone from your table can come and hang it on the brightly twinkly tree over here. So in a sense, it's representative of many things, and Susan will explain that. The other thing I want to say, while we're thinking about suffering, we're not going to focus in on just one kind of suffering, because we, as human beings, experience a range of challenges in life. However, the Church of Scotland put out quite a useful little leaflet on mental health issues, and there's some copies sitting out in the foyer for you to take away at the end of the service. But we're taking up 2 or 3 of the questions that are raised in this, not to talk about mental health per se, but just generally about how we as a church respond to those around us who are suffering. The introduction to the leaflet says this, talking about our churches. Is it that we are aware enough to care, small enough to notice, and moving slowly enough to actually deliver. 3 great little questions that we're going to tease out this morning. So, church this morning is about inquiring into this subject that impacts on all of us. I have a couple of announcements to add for the next few weeks. On Saturday next at 9:30, Colin is looking for some volunteers. And it's volunteers who can help move some of the debris. There's Christmas tree branches, there's bits and pieces of wood, there's all sorts of stuff lying out the back of the church. We want to tidy that up and want to move it to the side gate where it can be loaded onto a trailer and taken away. So 9:30 Saturday morning, could you please let Colin know if you're able to volunteer for that. Then Margaret has asked me to mention the Beetle Drive as part of Fair Trade Fortnight on the 3rd of March. What day of the week is that? Friday. It's a Friday. So you'll have had your pay, you'll be able to come along and take part in the Beetle Drive. It's a social evening. It doesn't cost anything. Don't worry about the pay bit. And those who don't know what it is, Margaret says, I can assure you it's great fun and no live animals are involved. And there will be fair trade refreshments. So put that in your diaries. And then on Sunday after the Beetle Drive, there'll be a special Kirk session meeting. And that's in preparation to receive the accounts of the church before the annual stated meeting. And there may be 1 or 2 other items to discuss as well. So that's Sunday immediately after the service on the 5th of March. I think it's very apt that today we're thinking about the theme of suffering. You've only got to look at the news reports coming in from Turkey and Syria. And Chaz is going to come and talk a little bit about the DEC campaign to raise funds for supporting that. Thanks, Chaz.
Thank you, Alan. Good morning, everyone. So I think we've all heard quite a lot about this week. So I thought I'd just say for a minute about the kind of things that are going on. So Monday, I was busy getting ready to do something else this last week, when the news came through of the earthquake on Monday morning. So I think we all heard there was a 7.8 earthquake, magnitude earthquake, and then 9 hours later there was a 7.5, both enormous, devastating, and we've seen it on the TV, haven't we? We've seen the pictures. We're not sure how many people have died and how many people are injured. It's a moving picture just now, but it's probably going to be one of the worst disasters we've seen in recent times. I know you've seen about the DEC appeal. There's a picture, and I think we've all seen the pictures, but the DEC appeal is covering Turkey and the mountainous area of Turkey there, and the north west area of Syria, which is across the border. So Christian Aid has no programs in Turkey, but we do have a long-term program in Syria. So we've got partners on the ground who are sort of ready to go, and already we're working. I think some of the details on the next slide, maybe the next one. We reckon there was 4 million people in need of aid in northwest Syria already. And because of the winter and the devastation in Syria, a lot of people were already living in refugee camps, or in unsafe buildings because of the war. And now that's been made so much more desperate for people. But we've got people on the ground who are already doing those kind of winter kits, warm clothes. We were already procuring all that stuff. So any money that comes through the DEC appeal that comes through Christian Aid will go into that. And we'll be able to ramp it up you can imagine it's probably going to be not just 2 or 3 times the magnitude, it's going to be 100 times. So that's something that we'll be doing straight away, and we can mobilize really, really quickly. I think the other things that we've been doing in Syria have been to do with the children in refugee camps who've obviously had their lives disturbed over many years. So education's been a thing, healthcare's been a thing, and helping people to have a livelihood as well, make some money when they're away from their homes in a displaced situation. So there's lots and lots of things that our partners are already doing that will be very, very useful in this situation. So I don't want to say too much more about it. I think, we can see the need. There's a DEC appeal, which is online. So if you're a taxpayer, give online and gift aid it, and Christian Aid will get part of that as we go through. If you want to leave some money behind, we'll have a dish at the back of the church today and next week, and I'll collect the money and send it in on our behalf. So thanks very much for your generosity. I'm sure you've all been very generous already, and thanks for putting the slides together. And let's pray for Turkey and Syria. And I think it's a long road ahead of us, but we're well placed to offer help. So thanks very much.
It's always very heartening when we gather together. And I think because we do it so often, we become a bit inured to the potency of it. And let's remember that what we are doing is we're witnessing to an intention to be well, and we're witnessing to an intention to accompany each other on this strange and mystical path of longing for God. And it often seems to me that what we're saying is yes to life, yes to community, and we're saying no to rampant individualism. And we are here because we're never, ever meant to do this on our own. So before we go any further, please just say hello, maybe to somebody you don't know, and tell them your name. Thank you. There is a kind of fluidity and a kind of unspoken choreography to this kind of gathering today, so don't feel embarrassed to get up and down and move around. One of the things that Alan mentioned, this tree, we could talk forever about the symbolism of trees, and there's all sorts of sacred metaphors attached to it. The wee leaves that are on your table, at any point today when you're reflecting on your feelings about suffering, it might not even be your own suffering, but somebody else's. If you want to write a word down or a symbol, it might be your rage, it might be your powerlessness, it might be your loss, it might be a reflection on some kind of healing that's happened for you. And just get up and go and tie it onto this little tree here. Trees are compassionate beings. If you read a book called The Hidden Life of Trees, absolutely amazing how trees help each other out. And leaves also die. Leaves die and then new leaves are born. So feel free to write whatever you like on your leaves and tie it on there. And we hope it might be helpful today to kind of reflect on the different textures of suffering and how suffering perhaps feeds our well-being and actually has a strange texture in our capacity for thriving. God says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
Be still and know that I'm with you. Be still and know that I am here. Be still and know that I'm with you. Be still and know. When darkness comes upon you and covers you with fear and shame, be still and know that I'm with you, and I will say your name. If terror falls upon your bed and sleep no longer comes, remember all the words I said. Be still and know. And when you go through the valley and the shadow comes down from the hill, if morning never comes to be still, be still, be still. If you forget the way to go and lose where you came from, if no one is standing beside you, be still and know I am. Be still and know that I'm with you. Be still and know I am.
A prayer. The world and time are the dance of the Lord in emptiness. The silence of the spheres is the music of the wedding feast. God, in the momentum of our daily lives, often we are skimming over the surface of the depths of our own life. This is sad, because your mystifying oneness with us is actually hidden in those very depths. All our traumas, our abandonments, our losses and sufferings, internalized from the past, they linger within us. And when we are finding our way down into these depths, we have to pass through these hurting places. God, we need your help for us to find a way for this to feel safe. God, you neither invade nor abandon us, but you do mirror for us the invincible preciousness of ourselves in the midst of our pain. It's very strange, but in you we find freedom from the tyranny of suffering in the midst of suffering. And in you we find freedom from the tyranny of death in the midst of death. So we trust you are holding us as we approach our vulnerable places and try to abandon ourselves to the paschal mystery, which on our behalf transfigures our wounds and reminds us that there is not one moment of our lives which has been wasted. In the name of the Holy One who walks this path before us, Amen.
I wonder what you think of when you hear the word suffering. Suffering. A devastating earthquake, war in Ukraine, a woman going missing while walking her dog, the rape and abuse of many women and girls by one man, the increase in the cost of living. These are the stories of suffering that have made headline news. But for others, suffering is much more personal and local and can remain very much hidden. One man called Richard Rohr, he defines suffering as how we feel whenever we are not in control. How we feel when we are not in control. If we think of suffering in this way, then we can be certain that every person we meet here in this room today, in our community, in our city, is suffering to some degree. For we all face circumstances in life over which we have no control. Of course, not being in control is manageable when the bus is late and we miss an appointment, or when our plans are cancelled because of the weather, or when we don't get a job that we've applied for. These things we can usually deal with quite easily. But other events that happen that are out with our control can cause great suffering in our lives. Things such as a chronic illness, whether physical or mental, the death of a family member or close friend, the sense of isolation that brings loneliness, which makes the days drag by, the slow loss of a loved one through dementia or illness, or the sense of despair when life holds little joy. These are the kinds of suffering that happen everywhere and all around us. They happen to us and they happen to those we know. Last week we had Martin Johnson here, and he challenged us to be salt, to be the sprinkling that preserves. What should we be preserving in our community as we think of suffering? We should be preserving the assurance of the presence and love of God for all those who are suffering. The dignity, respect, compassion, comfort, and support for all who are dealing with situations and events out with their control. As Martin asked us, what is the right way of living to bring a full flavoured life to people who are suffering? Martin also encouraged us to be light, not to hide away, either within these walls or within the security of our own homes and lives, but to live out our faith in ways that bring light to the world where suffering is a part of our everyday experience. Each week, one woman comes to the capacitor class here at Finn's Place, and when I ask her how she's doing, she replies, "Just getting on with it, nothing else for it." She says exactly the same thing every week. Her life could be fine, but her stoic attitude may also be hiding a life of suffering, but which she doesn't wish to share. And the language she uses suggests that there is nothing that can be done in times of suffering anyway. We just do have to get on with it, with things, despite how we feel. And yet in Scripture, we're reminded that we are to share one another's burdens, to support one another in times of suffering. But in order to do that, we need to know what kind of suffering people are going through. So the first question for us discussed today around our tables is this one. Are we aware enough of the suffering of those around us to care and to do something about it? What kinds of suffering do you see around your neighbourhood, among your friends and family, and also, of course, within this room? What is it that makes people sad and feel that life is not worth living? And then once we know what suffering people are going through, how can we show that we care? So plenty for you to think about. The questions are on your tables, and don't forget to use the post-it notes to post your answers up on the board. Okay, over to you. Just one more minute and then we'll move on.
Could the band come? We could start playing, we're going to sing now. Christ is the word in which we move. Christ is the thought we're summoned to love. Christ is the voice which calls us to care. Christ is the one to the lost, Christ shows his face.
Well, sounded like there was lots of discussion going on round the tables. There was a bit too much laughing from the back left. So, okay. Oh, right, well, okay, fair enough. And the band obviously enjoyed themselves so much it took a wee while to get them back up. Anyway, I mean, the Bible has lots of stories about suffering and people asking to be healed by Jesus. And the story that I find the most moving is only 2 or 3 lines long. It's when Jesus was preaching round the Lake of Galilee. And in fact, the story is inserted inside another story of healing. But it's the story of the woman. We don't know her name, but we're told that she's been bleeding for 12 years. She'd been to lots of doctors. She hadn't been healed, and she was quite desperate. Now, of course, in those days, if you'd been bleeding like that, she would have been regarded as impure. Impure, forbidden for going to the temple, forbidden for getting involved with large events, shunned in many ways. But she was desperate, and she believed that Jesus could heal her. She was in the crowd. She shouldn't have been, but she was. She didn't call out to him. She didn't ask to be healed. What she did was she crept closer and touched the bottom of the hem of his cloak. That's all she did. And she was healed by that. And Jesus felt the power go out of him. And he turned and asked, "Who touched my cloak? Who was it?" And she was forced then to acknowledge that it was her and to acknowledge why she'd touched his hem. And far from shunning her or being angry at her, he showed her amazing kindness and compassion. Intimacy, he called her daughter. Daughter, your faith has healed you. And this compassion and kindness must have been amazing for her. You can imagine she'd been full of shame, full of guilt, full of fear, but her desire to be close, unnoticed, being close was what she wanted. Now, how many people do we know who might want to be helped, but are fearful of asking? Fearful of coming out and doing it, but might edge a bit closer. Come a bit closer here. Even come in and sit for a coffee at times. How many do we know? So, do people feel free enough to share their suffering with us, individually or collectively? How can we create a safe environment here for people to share their suffering? How can we become slow enough to actually deliver care and compassion? That's the second questions on your sheets. So I would ask you to look at that now.
perhaps we can draw to a close our conversation. Please. There is one more scene that we're going to reflect on, and it's a story that some of us might know. There's an encounter in the New Testament between Jesus and a man who was known as blind Bartimaeus, and I do wonder if he was defined in the eyes of others or even himself by his disability. There is an amazing few phrases in this account. Bartimaeus is sitting at the side of the road and he is wearing a cloak, and it's not insignificant that this is mentioned. It's interesting that Linda's mentioning of the cloak ties in a way with this. And Jesus is coming by with a big crowd of people beside him, and Bartimaeus hears that Jesus is near him and he shouts out. And some people in the crowd are maybe embarrassed or irritated and ask him to be quiet. But Jesus says to the folk, no, call him over. And it says Bartimaeus jumped to his feet. The people around him said, he wants you to see him, wants you to go over. So he jumps to his feet. And then the amazing 5 words, he threw down his cloak. I love that phrase. I think it's one of the most important sentences in the whole of the New Testament. He threw down his cloak. Because it always reminds me of, and this is, I'm confessing to a very unkind thought I used to have when I was nursing. I would recognise a trait in patients who I thought actually really loved being an invalid. And the phrase came to me one day, you are wearing the mantle of the invalid. The mantle of the invalid. And there's all sorts of spin-offs, and there's wee hidden advantages to having that image, and people invest in it. And I think it's such a crucial and interesting feature of the story that we are told that Bartimaeus threw down his cloak. And that had become part of his image. That's how people saw him, maybe. And did he feel naked without it? Did people maybe not recognize him in the same way? But maybe there was some body wisdom in him that knew that he was in the presence of Jesus, who would neither invade or abandon him. And when we're with someone with whom we have unconditional trust, it helps us own our vulnerability. And then an amazing thing happens, of course. Jesus asks what seems like an absurd question, what do you want of me? As if that question was needed. But then, of course, that is a very wise invitation for Bartimaeus to name his vulnerability and to do that in front of everyone, and then to ask for what he needed. So you can see that Jesus healed Bartimaeus, but Bartimaeus participated very, very crucially in his own recovery. He stood up on his own feet. He threw off this mantle, and he responded to Jesus in front of everyone else. And then Jesus says, your faith has made you whole. Yeah. So this last little bit, we look at and think about what has helped us in our suffering. And maybe some of us know that we've got very subtle mantles of invalidity, which maybe no one else knows about. And it's such an exciting and very scary thought that maybe there is an invitation for us to throw off that mantle and to go to the hurting place and have a new life. Anyway, let's just think about some of that. Yeah. May the grace of time heal your wounds. Yeah, we'll finish now because we've gone over time, haven't we? um,
Okay, folks, you can bring your conversations to a close. We had quite a lot happening at the beginning of the service, so we're a wee bit behind, but hopefully you're a patient lot. And I've been reading some of your comments over here, and it's amazing what is coming out of this conversation. So if the band can come together.
You only need Emma, it's okay. It's just Emma.
Oh, it's just Emma. It's just Emma. So Emma's going to sing. Use this time to think of the words, but also to reflect on the conversations we've been having. And then we'll go to the blessing, and there'll be a final benediction for our service today.
Okay.
When it feels like I'm slipping through your fingers, when the weight of my sin's too much to bear, when the enemy whispers that I'm still who I once was, sweet Jesus, meet me there. Meet me in the struggle, meet me in the fight, meet me in the trouble of my darkest night, walking through the valley of shadows everywhere. Sweet Jesus, would you meet me there? When I'm sure I'm forgotten and forsaken, when I find myself all alone and scared, when the chains of anxiety have brought me to my knees, sweet Jesus, meet me there. Meet me in the struggle, meet me in the fight, meet me in the trouble of my darkest night, walking through the valley of shadows everywhere. Sweet Jesus, meet me there? Sweet Jesus, would you meet me there?
May you be blessed in the holy names of those who, without knowing it, help to carry and lighten your pain. May you know serenity when you are called to enter the house of suffering. May a window of light always surprise you. May you be granted the wisdom to avoid false resistance when suffering knocks on the door of your life. May you glimpse its eventual gifts. And may memory bless and protect you with the hard-earned light of past travail, to remind you that you have survived before. And though the darkness is now deep, you will soon see approaching light. Thanks be to God.
Our cafe service is almost over. There's a short video benediction that I'll ask you to watch. It takes a lot of people to put a service like this together, and I want to thank all of them who've done that and participated. And one of those who was involved told us that his favourite psalm was Psalm 139. So we thought we'd put something together because there's some very rich language in there. It's as if God knows everything about us. He loves us so much. Don't be frightened by the noises at the start.
Oh Lord, you have examined my heart, and know everything about me. You know the Lord has examined my heart, I know everything about me. When I sit and stand, when far away, you know my every thought.
And know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. And far away, you know my every thought.
You know what I'm going to say.
You chart my path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I stand or sit. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
Every moment you know where I am. You know what I'm going to say before I even say it. You both precede and follow me and place your hand of blessing on my head. This is too glorious, too wonderful to believe.
I can never be lost to your spirit. I can never get away from my God. If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the place of the dead, you are there. If I ride the morning winds to the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me. Your strength will support me.
If I try to hide in the darkness, the night becomes light around me. For even darkness cannot hide from God. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are both alike to you.
You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit them together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. It is amazing to think about. Your workmanship is marvellous, and how well I know it.
You were there while I was being formed in utter seclusion. You saw me before I was born and scheduled each day of my life before I began to breathe. Every day was recorded in your book.
How precious it is, Lord, to realise that you're thinking about me constantly. I can't even count how many times a day your thoughts turn towards me. And when I waken in the morning, you're still thinking of me.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest.
I get up and when I waken in the morning, looking down to the hill,
I tried to hide in the darkness.
Marvellous, and how well I know it. You were there while I was being formed in utter seclusion.
This is too glorious, too wonderful to believe. I can never be lost to your spirit.
Thank you, everyone. Go in peace, and may God go with you.